Hi, Gregory Clump here, Chief Economist with the Canadian Real Estate Association with more good news on national housing activity over multiple listing service systems of Canadian real estate boards for March of 2011. Before I get into the latest stats, let me emphasize that housing market trends often differ due to a number of local factors. So for that reason, you should consult your local realtor to understand how trends are shaping up in your housing market. With that important proviso out of the way, let's take a look at the national numbers in detail, starting with sales activity. Seasonally adjusted national housing activity in March 2011 was up 1/10 of a percentage point from levels the previous month. That kept sales activity in March close to the 5- and 10-year average for the month and continued a trend we saw in each of the two previous months. As a result, seasonally adjusted national sales activity in the first quarter of 2011 was up 4.5% from levels recorded in the fourth quarter of last year, pushing activity to the highest quarterly level in a year. Most of the quarterly increase in seasonally adjusted national sales activity was due to demand in Vancouver and Toronto. Recent changes to mortgage regulations may have caused a number of sales in some of Canada's more expensive housing markets to be brought forward into the first quarter that would otherwise have occurred later in the year. So that's the demand side of the equation. Let's take a look at what happened on the supply side. As anticipated, sellers looking to trade up before changes to mortgage regulations took effect in March made their move early. Evidence shows there was a significant rise in newly listed homes in January and February of this year. With changes to mortgage regulations looming in March, the seasonally adjusted number of new listings for the month dropped 5% month to month. So consider the balance between supply and demand. Steady sales activity combined with fewer new listings caused the national resale housing market to tighten. The national sales to new listings ratio, a measure of balance between supply and demand, stood at 56.5% in March. This remains firmly entrenched in balanced territory, with March marking the firmest reading for national housing market balance in more than a year. Based on sales to new listings ratios, more than half of local markets in Canada could be considered balanced in March, with 2/3 of the remaining markets considered to be classified as sellers' markets. The number of months of inventory is another measure of the balance between housing supply and demand. It represents the number of months it would take to sell current inventories at the current rate of sales activity. The seasonally adjusted number of months of inventory stood at 5.6 months at the end of March on a national basis. That's the same as it was in February. Almost half of all local markets saw the number of months of inventory shrink compared to the previous month. And lastly, let's take a look at price. Throughout the first quarter of 2011, the national average price was skewed higher by strong activity in a few pricey areas of Greater Vancouver. March 2011 was no exception, with an increase of almost 9% year over year. What's happening is that a record number of multi-million-dollar property sales in Richmond and Vancouver West is pushing up average price for Greater Vancouver, the province of British Columbia, and nationally. If Vancouver is taken out of the equation, the national average price increase is cut by more than half to 4.3%. Looking ahead, evidence suggests the potential rush of sales activity in March before recent changes to mortgage regulations took effect was a story that was largely focused in condo sales in Greater Vancouver. This confirms that the expected impact on sales activity of recent changes to mortgage regulations will likely be minor over the near term. Interest rates are now widely expected to remain on hold until at least mid-July. The continuation of low interest rates will be supportive of resale housing demand, market balance, and prices in the near term. Now that the first quarter statistics are in, CREA will soon be revising its forecast for national and provincial sales activity and for average price, so stay tuned.